Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Love Fruit podcast. And today we're very grateful to be in the presence again of another fantastic legend in the world of raw foods, live foods, what he would call Sunfired Foods. We are, of course, speaking to none other than Dr. Aris LaTham, PhD. To give you a little bit of an introduction to Dr. LaTham, he is a world-renowned culinary innovator and health and wellness motivational speaker. He is considered to be the father of gourmet ethical raw foods cuisine in America. He debuted his raw food creations in 1979 when he started Sunfired Foods, a live food company in Harlem, New York. In the years since, he has trained thousands of raw food chefs and added innumerable recipes to his repertoire. Dr. Aris was the keynote presenter at the 2009 International Vegan Festival in Rio de Janeiro. In 2004, he was a keynote presenter to the 36th World Vegetarian Congress in Brazil. In 2005, he made the keynote presentation at the European Vegetarian Congress in Italy, and he was a feature presenter at the World VegFest in both Dubai and in Chennai, India. Dr. Aris, also known as the Sunfired Gourmet, has been a complete vegetarian for 50 years and has eaten Sunfired Foods exclusively for the past 44 years. So, Dr. LaTham, is there anything else you would like to add on to that? And thank you for joining us today.
Oh, you're welcome. It's quite a pleasure to be here to share with you. Uh, no, I think you have, that's a great introduction. Thank you so much.
So, where are you right now? Are you in Panama, and where is it you are?
I guess I might say I'm in maybe Little London or something like that. I am in a British overseas territory, as they call it politically. It's the beautiful island of the Grand Cayman. This is
Ah,
where,
yeah.
yes, I'm an artist in residence here at a resort here on this beautiful island in the Cayman Islands.
That's incredible. So, are you in charge there of helping with their raw food cuisine and things like that?
Yes, well, actually, I'm here as a resident, basically developing my intellectual property, writing my book, developing my online institute, and these things. And in exchange, as a resident, I assist them, the company that has got me in residence, by basically just being accessible to their guests and answering any curious questions they may have and getting them to experience sun-fired cuisine
Fanta-
firsthand.
Fantastic. So, we'll probably go into what you mean by sun-fired cuisine, but can we first maybe start? I'm sure people would love to hear your story and your journey towards this kind of lifestyle that you live, because probably not many people, when you started off, were interested in this kind of lifestyle or diet. So I'm curious as to how did you start making those changes to your diet?
Well, it's very interesting because, in essence, I was born into this, and for me, it was never a style. It's always been a life. I was born in Panama in the Canal Zone, in a tropical rainforest, in the jungle, a few minutes from Panama City, major international hub today. But being in that environment on a U.S. territory, the Panama Canal Zone, in a Latin country, and descendant of African Caribbean family, we were pretty much in an environment living in a time. We're talking 1947 is the year of my birth,
Hmm.
so I'll be 73 this year. So during that time, it was strictly about being on the land and enjoying what life provided to us. So whether it was animal protein, plant protein, you name it, everything we consumed was fresh. There was
Yeah.
no refrigeration. We had no real stove. We had a coal pot, Then we got elevated to a kerosene stove. So it was strictly, living off the land and, putting it together just as it came to us. So living in this environment, growing up in Panama until the age of 17 and migrating to the U.S., landing in big city USA, Brooklyn, New York, and getting introduced to the standard American diet, better known as the sad diet. I got involved with characters like Sloppy Joe and, had hot dogs and hamburgers, things totally unknown to me in my culture. So obviously, I realized that my system became corrupted. you know,
Right.
yeah, I was like, wait a minute, who am I? Where am I? What am I doing here? So after 2 years, I pretty much found my way back home. We're talking 1967. I'm on the college campus in suburban, New York City, and they're the hippies, back to the land,
Yeah.
natural living, organic food, the counter Vietnam War movement, basically, which was a rice war, and of course the Black Power movement of the '60s in inner city New York. So there was a tremendous consciousness uprising in a revolutionary way, where for me and basically my crew that I hung out with, trying to be hip was really trying to be healthy, eating natural foods, going back to the land and recognizing that the food that we saw in the university cafeteria, in our neighborhoods, they were basically weapons, waxed apples and all this stuff. We're like, wait a minute, what is this? This thing makes me sneeze. It makes me cough. It must be a time bomb, you know. So we're not going to Vietnam and kill folks for their rice. So why should we go eat these wax apples and all this other crap here, all this sloppy food, and get sick? No, we're revolutionaries. We have to take charge. We have to take ownership. So pretty much it was about human rights, for us. And this is how it started, just being a young, wise college student at the time, looking for the new knowledge frontier, and we found it, natural living.
And who were the kind of the leaders at that time, or the people were there books you were reading? Were there people that you were teaching you? Was there any events you could go to? Was anything like that happening?
Yeah, it was very interesting. Well, first, number one, the hip thing was having you a little bag of trail mix, hanging around with you, on the campus. So you had your trail mix. You were cool. You were in the in crowd. So I decided, like, hey, some of this stuff in this trail mix was questionable. Sugared pineapple and this thing. So let me find the source where they're buying these little things and putting them together. And I discovered there were health food stores. So I went to the health food store to go buy my sunflower seeds and raisins and these things, trying to put together my own custom blend of
Sure.
trail mix. And there I came up about all these books. I like, oh, wow, books. Wow, hey, natural living, vegetarianism and fasting and all of these things. So I became very curious
Hmm.
and started buying books. The first book I actually bought was Paul Bragg's Scientific Fasting. I'm like, well, if all this stuff is real, then I might need a little detox here. So yeah, before I did anything, I just went on a fast, once
Hmm.
a week, every Saturday, drinking distilled water back then. That was what it was all about. Distilled water fast, 36 hours, cleaning myself out. I had a healing crisis, of course, on my first fast. And as I read further into the book, I realized what was going on. And so, getting this little clean out going on, I decided that, well, I definitely can't go back to eating hot dogs and hamburgers and these types of things. And so I started reading more. I found another book of his, and one by Pablo Airola from Italy, and it was Are You Confused? you know. So in that book, Are You Confused? They talked about all the things you need to start letting go. The first thing was processed meat, you know, all of the salamis and bolognas, all the basically the garbage that they roll up in
Hmm.
plastic tubing and call it sausage.
Hmm.
So, and then I got rid of pork, then I got rid of red meat and those types of things. So it was a little gradual process, but in the meantime, I basically gobbled up all the books I could find on the culture. Read people like Hilton Hotema.
Hmm.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and I went really towards the old school because in the immediate school, the only one that really appealed to me at the time was Victoras Kulvinskas,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know, and Dr. Ann Wigmore, because they were, well, Victoras, he was a hippie, got his commune and, all these colorful juices and sprouts and all this stuff. It's like, hey, this is fun stuff. So a lot of the other stuff that was going on with vegetarianism at the time, it was to me it just wasn't cutting the mark. It was kind of contradictory, all of the TVP and the texturized vegetable protein, the fake meat, and all these things. I was never a fan for that. It just never really struck me. So yeah, so getting into Victoria Kulvinskas and Dr. Ann Wigmore and Dick Gregory, who was became a fruitarian.
Hmm.
Dick Gregory was 300 pounds. He got he was gotten a hold of by a lady out of Chicago, Dr. Alvinia Fulton with the Fultonia Institute. So she put him on a fast and knocked him down from 300 pounds to 98 pounds. And he became a fruitarian. So he was like my hero. I'm like, look at this guy, man. I want to be like him. He ran from New York, from LA to Washington, D.C., fasting, to promote, the whole fruitarian concept. So yeah, so fusing that energy, that I could meet and touch that was real tangible with what I was reading in the books, I pretty much took off like a rocket. So, that's 68, 69. And in my neighborhood in Brooklyn, in the inner city at the time, we had independent African schools, teaching about, self-help and these types of things. And part of the curriculum was about natural living. So I took a class on Vegetarian 101. And we had a food co-op, bringing in organic produce and nuts and seeds and stuff in bulk. So I volunteered at the co-op and started getting, real life information in my neighborhood from people I could identify with. So I was like, hey, this is real. And so by 1970, full, 2 years later, I stopped eating all animal products, all processed foods, and was basically just back to being a fresh kid, you know,
Hmm.
fresh foods, buying my stuff at the co-op and start making my juices and things like that. I even during that time there was the raw dairy products were pretty popular back then, but I never subscribed even to that because growing up how I grew up in the forest, we didn't have cheese. I wasn't
Sure.
like, yeah, milk and those things were luxury. So I was like, no, I don't want no raw milk and raw cheese. That's really wasn't for me either. But the fresh food was my thing. So I went fully into starting to prepare my own foods, not left mother's house and these things. And my option was, keeping it simple. I was steaming, baking, boiling, a little quick stir fry and those types of things. I wanted to get out of the kitchen quick, Yeah, because, growing up in my mother's kitchen and my grandma's kitchen, they were like big chefs. So it was always a major undertaking, and that just really wasn't for me. I wanted it easy, in and out. So for 6 years, I was, really enjoying that lifestyle till, I started really seriously considering not eating any cooked food from that point on.
Sure.
So we're talking 1976.
Hmm.
I stopped consuming cooked foods and got into all raw, 100%. So it's been 44 years now. And but back then, I pretty much didn't meet too many people that were into the lifestyle, into eating all raw food, I probably met no more than 10 people within the first year.
Hmm.
And most of these people, they were ill. You know, yeah, they were trying to heal cancer. You know, they were
Yeah.
big fans of Dr. Ann Wigmore and Victorious Kovinskis and these people. And, you know, I'll go check out their restaurants and things like that. But it's like rabbit food, you know, like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
really
yeah.
had to be sick to eat it. You know, it's not that there was anything wrong with it. It
No,
just was
uh,
very plain, very simple, very pure, you know, unspiced, you know. So I just really, from there on, uh, you know, having all the knowledge that I had gleaned at that point, I knew this was for me, but I had to pretty much like step on it. So I spiced it, you
mm.
know. Out of my grandma's kitchen, I knew how to spice quite well. So, you know, so I would do things like, say, the traditional tabbouleh, you know, that they do with the bogle wheat and these types of things. I would just put my energy on it and come up with something that I will call, say, a kush tabbouleh.
Hmm.
So instead of just taking the bogle wheat and soaking it in water, I would soak it in carrot juice, lemon juice, put my spices in there so it absorbed and it was like really kicking,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, yeah. And
And then instead of just the plain basic, you know, parsley and cucumber and tomatoes, I added other vegetables to it, you know, and really, so from there, I just started developing my own dishes just in that, with that type of spirit, just pretty much just detoxing traditional recipes.
yeah, I think an interesting thing you're bringing up there, Aris, is the fact that if you look back to, there's always been different styles of the raw food diet, and I'm guessing the Anne Wigmore side of things was focusing a lot on sprouts and
Yes,
green juices and vegetables. You know, a detox diet that might
yes,
be
correct.
that might have been well designed for someone that was, as you're saying, was sick, but for someone that was more
Yeah,
active, might not have been uh, as good. And I know that from that side, that the people that have carried on that, you know, the Hippocrates Institute and stuff like that, that I've heard them basically say that they sort of don't really recommend fruit. And I've seen you in an interview where you said basically, well, what's the fruit for? Who's meant to be eating this fruit when it's all around us, you know? And so even then, did you see that maybe that path wasn't quite right for you, that style?
well, yeah, yeah, you see, the thing is, once I realized the context in which they were presenting their science, which was basically oriented towards people who were ill, primarily cancer patients. You know,
Yeah.
you feed cancer patients, you know, things that are high in sugar, like fruits, then, you know, it becomes a big fest, you know, for the cancer cells, you know. But what I realized though, with me not being sick,
Yeah.
you know, made the difference. So my approach was not that as one who were looking for healing, who were looking to remedy a particular situation, but I was just an eater, and I'm looking to smack my palate and enjoy, you know. So so eating fruits for me, even back then, because I grew up eating fruits,
Hmm.
you know, really, in the rainforest, 70% of the food I grew up on were fruits. And I grew up magnificently well. So for me to stop eating fruits, because now I've taken on this vegetarian eating system, why should I stop eating fruits when the literature that I've been reading is sharing with me? I mean, people like Hereward Carrington.
Hmm.
Hereward Carrington, Fruit, the Food and Medicine for Man, where he proves scientifically that human beings are not vegetarians, or what you may call an herbivore. We're not herbivorous creatures. We're not omnivorous. We're not carnivorous. we're more closely related to the frugivorous beings.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the monkeys, the gorillas, the higher apes. You know, the way we live upright, the way we even give birth. Our baby come out, then the placenta comes out.
Mm.
You know, grass eaters don't live this way. Greens eaters, a cow, a goat, a horse. These grass eaters, you see how they are. They're anatomically, they're completely structured different from us.
Mm-hmm.
So, so just looking at that factual information and observing myself and seeing that, you know, I really wasn't even that drawn that much to eat greens now in my life, that I didn't grow up with it in the culture in my normal upbringing, you know. So yes, staying away from fruits because, you know, we have damaged ourselves. Fruits are medicine, as Hereward Carrington say. It is food and medicine for humans. So if your body has been polluted and you start putting fruits into it, then the fruit's first order of business is going to be to cleanse the body out. So yeah, you're going to get the diarrhea, you're going to get the runs, a lot of waste is going to be released out of the tissues, thrown back upstream, and you may have a healing crisis as a cancer patient. So I understood all of these things and kept on moving forward with it. Even when I was at Hippocrates Health Institute in 1987 to 1988, I spent a year at Hippocrates Institute. When they moved it from Boston to West Palm Beach, Florida, I set up their food service operation. I set up their kitchen. I was the executive consulting chef at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I got into the whole sprouting culture. I learned the entire Hippocrates system inside and out, but I still maintain my fruit option as well. But what I actually ended up noticing eventually is that really the main difference is that fruits, as we know it, is a simple carbohydrate, a simple direct sugar. Then you have the opposite, which is a complex carbohydrates.
Mm-hmm.
Complex carbohydrates are starches, grains, beans, and deep roots,
Mm-hmm.
starchy foods. These foods are simple carbohydrates or complex carbohydrate, which is actually complicated carbohydrates that need to be broken down into a simple carbohydrate, into sugar. Ultimately, all rice, all beans, all potatoes need to be broken down into sugar for the human body to be able to utilize it. So it
Yeah.
has to be digested properly.
Uh-huh.
So if you're eating fruits like the way I was eating fruits, and now I'm also not eating a whole bunch of beans and rice and all of these deep roots and things like that, the body has a conflict that it has to resolve with that type of food combination. Fruits and starches do not combine in properly in the same medium.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I'm eating all of these apples, say for breakfast, and then I'm going to have pancake with that, something is not going to work out. You know, my body is not going to effectively digest the pancake and turn it into sugar while it already has the signal that I have eaten all of these apples and my blood is already full of sugar, so I am not going to turn these pancakes into sugar and poison you. So
That's,
obviously the pancakes go undigested
mm.
if the fruit sugar got absorbed into the small intestine. If they did not get absorbed at the time, then they get held back by the pancake. The pancake takes over the digestive system, and the fruit from the apples or other sugar uh, will ferment, and
Right.
then we have a problem. So realistically, we have to come to the choice of
Mm.
one or the other, complex carbohydrates or simple carbohydrates. So Hippocrates and these types of institutions, they have made the decision that it's better be complex carbohydrate. It's better be, you know, buckwheat, you know, sprouted buckwheat and these types of things using, you know, roots and
Mm-hmm.
grains and legumes, sprouted lentils, and all of these things rather than fruits because they are catering primarily to cancer patients and other people with other life-threatening diseases. I was not sick. There's no need for me to eat these things. And I'm a very light person. I like to move. I like to run. I like to walk. And when I eat these cooked starch, actually hold me back, or even in a sprouted form, when I make, say, something like, you know, rye crackers, sprouted rye cracker, it's still a major job for my body to actually turn that into sugar. So I would rather just eat peaches and strawberries and papayas and mangoes. So my body doesn't have to work. I mean, what sense does it truly make to not eat grapes
Mm,
as opposed to wanting to eat a big bucket of rice?
right.
You know, every single food that the human body consumes, it has to be broken down into a simple grape-like sugar.
Hmm.
That is the standard. Grape-like sugar. I mean, I've read the book of Hannah Brandt, who healed herself with the grape cure. The
Yeah.
woman had cancer, and she ate nothing but grapes and healed herself. So why should I now buy into this modern concept that no, if you eat grapes, it's going to hurt you, it's not going to actually heal you?
Mm.
There's something that we really need to examine about this. Yeah, they say, oh, fruits today is not the same as fruits yesterday, the sugar, the high glycemic index. Look, grains today is not the same as grains yesterday either. Okay. So what's good for the grains is definitely good for the fruits as well. So we need to be careful how a lot of these scientific knowledges, which is interestingly enough, I just read Hippocrates newsletter yesterday. I'm still, a member. I still get their subscription. And specifically, this is what they were talking about, how science has corrupted the whole investigative process, that only, big corporations now can certify that this thing is really working because they have all the scientific proof,
Mm.
and all of those things. So, I have the scientific proof that my body runs on sugar. I am 72, and I eat about 80% fruits,
Yeah.
you know, and I see other men my age, some even half of my age, and they're having a hard time living. They're having a hard time keeping up with me, you
Mm.
know, and they're eating all the rice, all the pasta, all the beans, all of these deep, heavy, complex carbohydrate, of course, not to mention the animal fat and other proteins that they eat with it, that also creates a problem within their system as well.
Yeah, so you mentioned your age, 72 years old. Have you do you experience any kind of you know degeneration at all at your age? The kind of things that people often have, arthritis, painful joints. Do you have any of these
No
conditions?
arthritis, no painful joints, no high blood pressure,
Mm.
no cardiac anything. I have 20/20 vision.
Wow, really?
20/20 vision, absolutely. No cataracts, no glaucoma, no pre-Alzheimer's, my brain drying up like a prune.
Mm.
None of those types of things. No big gut. you know, I, My feet, feel my feet. My feet is like baby feet
Yeah.
still. It's soft. It's not scaly. I don't have bunions. I don't have corn. I don't have tough, hands and all of those things. I still got a little soft touch with my non-working hand. Of course, my working hand, has handled a lot of knives and
Mm.
a lot of repetitive motion, so I got carpal tunnel syndrome on that hand. But the other hand, it's like touching you with a silk glove still. My skin, no wrinkles
Yeah.
or anything like that. My last medical report 2 years ago, blood test, urine test, all of the analysis, pretty much everything is in complete balance except, of course, the obvious, B12.
Okay.
Absolutely. I am a proud B12 deficient human being. I have a very high B12 deficiency, and I'm extremely proud of it. I have not, I've not taken any B12 supplements in the 50 years that I've not eaten any animal foods.
Wait.
No B12 patch,
Yeah.
none of those things at all, nothing.
So let's
And I
stop.
have a deficiency.
Yeah,
Yes.
let's stop right there because let's get into that because the reason I want to talk about that is, which is fascinating, is because many people are very concerned about B12 deficiency in the raw vegan, the raw food, the vegan movement. Um, so let's just what you said there is you have never taken a B12 supplement. You technically are B12 deficient right now, yet you don't have any of the conditions that people would associate, protect like anemia, all these conditions people associate with B12 deficiency, but you also don't have the diseases of old age. Tell us a bit
Hmm.
more. Did you make a decision not to take B12? Was it just something you instinctively did, or
Well, I've never taken any supplements, period. B12, B8, BX, BA, BD, whatever. I take no supplements whatsoever. No multivitamin, nothing whatsoever. I decided that I'm going to stick to being a fresh kid, fresh food. So no processed anything. Very minimally processed stuff. No flour or any of these things. Even spices. I myself personally, I'm very careful with that. I'm very careful with things that I do not recognize.
mm,
I do not trust the food industry, the pharmaceutical industry,
hmm.
the vitamin industry to sell me a powder and tell me
Right.
it is XYZ. I know that there's laws that governs these institutions, and a big law, part of the law says that they could put probably up to 10% fillers in anything
Mm,
that is manufactured,
yeah,
and they don't have to tell you, the government, or anyone else.
right.
So, no, I do not trust any of those things. I want to know what I put in because I expect to see what comes out is going to be favorable to me. I
Yeah.
don't want to question whether it was, the caps in the B12 or whatever. But the whole bottom line
Mm,
is doing my research, I realize that, well, even before I even go there, let's talk about the fact that, you know, even my medical doctor who did my analysis of my results, who told me I should go ahead and buy B12 supplements, even this man, poor thing, he gave me, he said, oh, you're in excellent health. This is what I posted it up on Facebook. I got it up there, the whole
hmm.
medical report, and his word, you're in excellent health. But he said, go buy some B12 supplements. Even this young man, he's younger than me,
Right.
he has a nervous problem and he has no B12 deficiency.
Mm, mm, mm.
B12 deficient person, your nerves are supposed to be shot. Look at my nerve. That's reduced into a little pinhole, and it goes right through that hole without me spilling it.
Yeah.
My nerves are steady.
Yeah.
So, based on my research, number one, the amount of B12 that humans consume today, the high amount of B12 that is found in the animal protein that they consume, their body excretes 95% of it.
Right.
So that tells me that they only utilize 5%.
Right.
The other 95%, God forbid, if it wasn't in that meat will probably choke them to death before it comes out of their system. So probably it's useful to getting the meat through their system.
Hmm.
But also, I observe the animals that produce a high B12 content in their flesh. Of course, the cow. Cows meat tons of B12. What is the life of a cow? I see the cows get up in the morning, they rise before sunrise, and they're out to pasture. They're eating all this grass, especially before the dew dries out on that grass in the morning. They're eating that grass that is full of dew, and they grazing there all day long. They take little breaks in the sun, when the sun gets hot and stuff like that. But they're eating all this grass and they're hanging out in the sun all day long. So that tells me that there is a photosynthesis process that is going on in the intestinal system of these cows.
Hmm.
That they're taking all this grass, especially with the morning dew on it, and turning it and producing B12 because they're hanging out in the sun. It's a photosynthesis process. So maybe if I try to hang out with them, I might learn a few things, you know.
Yeah, so what is your personal theory on that? Because as you've said, conventional medicine would say that you have a B12 deficiency and you're at risk of all these things, and obviously they would say, well, you can't get B12 unless you're supplementing. You can't get it on a vegan diet, and so how would you explain why you have even any B12 in your like what's you?
Okay. Well, the bottom line is, if my intestinal flora if my gut has negative bacteria in it, like the gut of a typical vegan who eats tons of beans and rice and all of this cooked complex starch and cooked complicated plant protein, they produce a lot of unfriendly bacteria because of the fermentation, the acid production, and all of these things going on in their system. So they're not capable of synthesizing the greens that they consume or other foods that they consume and to generate any amount of B12. But in my system, being on all living foods, all sun-fired foods, I don't have any unfriendly bacteria in my gut. So I am capable, in my gut, I am capable of synthesizing and producing the equivalent of the 5% B12 that is retained in the body of a flesh eater. And that's all my body needs. So
Right, I see.
that's enough. That's enough to keep me at optimum health without
Hmm.
me having to take any supplements whatsoever. That is my take on the whole thing. And I see it,
That's
so I do not buy into it as they can sell it to a typical vegan who's eating a lot of cooked food.
I've heard I've spoke to a few guys similar to yourself that have that basically never supplemented B12, and what they've said to me is when they were tested 20 years ago, they were told they were low in B12. 20 years later, they were told they were low in B12. So they've they've just they've been low in B12 for many years, but it's never disappeared. It's never went down to a dangerous level. So they've just
Yeah.
been technically. But anyway, getting back to your story, the late 1970s, I believe you were mostly self-taught in this lifestyle, and how was your transition to a raw food diet and a sunflower diet? Was it difficult? Did it take time? How did you approach it?
Well, it was pretty rocky because it was 1974 is when I decided I'm going to go completely raw. And I did not arrive there till 2 years later. And I came to realize that I was really dealing with a certain environmental hazardous way of living
Mm,
that was creating the challenge for me. And, because I was, in graduate school at the time in California, Orange County, Cal State Fullerton, working on my master's in linguistics. And also, I was a bilingual curriculum writer, San Bernardino Unified School District in Southern California as well. And, I realized that, I decided, hey, I'm not eating any more cooked food. And then, like 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, I'm eating cooked food again. Uh, and I just couldn't put my finger on it directly till 1976 when I was in a health food store in Riverside, California. I met a young man there who was, had a similar experience to mine. And he's like, yeah, he's, eating all raw food as well. He just started and, let's support each other. So we kind of just started hanging out together.
mm.
And, and lo and behold, 6 months later, I'm realized I'm still on raw food. I haven't go eat no cooked food. I didn't run to the Mexican restaurant and get some refried beans and some tortilla chips. And the reason why is because this young man was the only person that I was associating with at the time that did not smoke marijuana. So I had fully stopped smoking marijuana.
Right.
That was the trigger. That was the trigger for those 2 years that I was struggling with trying to stay on all raw. Anytime I went around my ganja smoking buddies and I took a toke, I got the munchies. And raw food was not cutting it. I needed some heavy cooked food. So that's really one of the major challenges. And realistically, over the years, I've really been observing it, and I don't see any pot smokers who are 100% raw food.
Right.
Everybody that I know that smoke pot, they have to eat cooked food. They do, realistically. So that was it. So ever since I gave up marijuana 44 years ago, I gave cooked food, went out the door with it. The munchies are real.
Great, great. And so a lot of your time is self-taught. And has your diet been the same since then to now, or have you changed
No,
things over the years, or?
oh, I've changed. I've gone through many transformations. And one thing I've realized is that the more mature my body becomes, the less food I desire. And the less complex, complicated, gourmet, exciting foods, the better.
Right.
You know. So as an educator, I teach the Sunfired way. I teach a wide variety. So I would teach people how to make crackers and breads and biscuits and cakes and pizza and hamburgers and all kinds of stuff, dehydrated this, dehydrated that, heavy, mac and cheese, all live, all plant foods and all of these things. But I do not consume really a good 80% of what I teach. I teach balance,
Mm.
and as an educator, I've figured out that I cannot be like the typical educator, vegan, raw food, or whatever they are, who would only teach what they eat. I cannot do that to an individual.
Right.
There's no one eating system fits us all.
Right.
You, so I teach balance. So you decide
Mm.
based on your reality how much complicated carbohydrates you want to consume, how much fruits you want to consume, how much protein you want to consume, how much vegetables you want to consume, and the combinations and so forth and so on. But for me, even now, well, besides the once a week fasting that I've been doing now for really 51 years, you know, it's no longer distilled water that I did back then, or what times I used to do just all orange juice or watermelon juice, do a mono, juice fast once a week. Now, I do mostly coconut water. I do fruit juices in the morning with coconut water, and I do vegetable juices in the afternoon with
Mm-hmm.
coconut. So it's basically giving my body a rest once per week. 36 hours, give the digestive system a rest so that the body focuses on elimination. So over 30 years ago, I also incorporated the lunar fasting. So I fast on the new moon and the full moon as well. One day, twice a month. So with my 52 days of fasting weekly for the year, my 24 days of fasting yearly, twice a month on the moon fast. We're talking 74 days of fasting just within that context right there alone. And then not too long after that, about 25 years ago, I added fasting on the equinox and the solstice, the change of each season 4 times per year.
All right. Okay.
And that's three days each time. June 20th, 21st, and 22nd, September, December, and March. So that's 12 days out of the year where I do these 3-day fasting 4 times a year as a major cleansing activity for me. So there we go. We add that on. That's 86 days
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
of fasting for the the entire year, and but there's overlapping and so forth and so on. But now, 4 years ago, actually 5 years now ago, when I was let's see, 70, 68, yeah, 4 years ago, I started my annual fast, my annual fast event of the year. So I fast the number of days to correspond with the number of years that I live each year. So this year I completed a 73-day fast. I started November, uh, I started, yeah, November 1st,
Hmm.
broke it January 15th.
When you
Actually, I did 72 days. The year before I did 71 days and 70 days.
are you,
So,
what type of fast do you mean there? A water fast, a juice
well,
fast?
well actually, I've changed the concept from a fast.
Right.
It's a feast, a
Okay.
juice feast.
Right.
I
Okay.
do a juice feast. So I do 1 gallon of juice every day. A quart of fruit juice in the morning with a quart of coconut water,
Hmm.
and a quart of vegetable juice in the afternoon with a quart of coconut water. 1 gallon of juice feasting every day for 73 days, since I'll be 73 years of age this year. And I find that as I'm aging, as I'm maturing physically, the less food I consume, the healthier I feel, more energy I have. So yes, right now, even in my eating system, I eat primarily, I'm about 80% fruits. In the morning now, on a regular basis, like I'm doing now, I just do water.
Hmm.
I mean, juices, just liquid.
Yeah.
I just do liquid. So I go through at least a couple of quarts, maybe 3 quarts of liquids in the morning. And then in the mid afternoon, around this time, I would do my fruits. I may have maybe 4 to 5 servings of fruit for the early afternoon. And then for dinner, about 6 p.m., I would have a large salad with fat. So whether it's avocados
Hmm.
or a nut meat, a
Hmm.
seed cheese,
Hmm.
you know, this is what I would consume. So I keep it very light. And I still, again, once a week fast and all of those things. And I find that I'm very stable in terms of my weight, in terms of my energy. Everything is quite stable. I get adequate rest, but for me, the big key is living in the sunshine as
Mm.
well.
Mm.
I live where coconuts grow. I no longer desire to live in places where coconuts don't grow. I
Right.
feel if coconuts don't grow in New York City, I can't grow there either.
Excellent. Well, let's get back to New York City. Late 70s, you started, I believe, Sunfired Cuisine. Um, so you transitioned from just being, obviously, you were studying linguistics, you were master's level, PhD, and all this, but you went into Sunfired Foods and live foods uh, as a profession, I suppose. And how did that all start? What were you doing? Was it a restaurant? Were you selling things to restaurants? How did that all work?
Well, Sunfired Cuisine. Uh, well, the word Sunfired is a word that I coined in 1979.
Hmm.
And ideally, the whole point of it was that I'm not pleased with the terminology raw food.
Right.
For plant foods, fresh mangoes, fresh avocados, fresh tomatoes, fresh lettuce, cucumber, eggplant, zucchini. There's nothing raw about these foods at all.
Right.
To me, it's an insult to call these foods raw. Something that's raw is maybe the side of a cow or a horse that the skins got ripped off. That's raw. This is not raw food. So the whole connotation of calling the food raw implies that uh, it's not done. It's not well. It's not fit for human consumption ideally,
Sure.
that nature made a mistake and I'm going to improve on it. As a human being, I'm going to beat it, bake it, fry it, stir it, steam it, jerk it, whatever,
Yeah.
barbecue it
Yeah.
because it's raw. No, there's nothing raw about lettuce at all. It is perfectly cooked. So for me, the point is that the sun actually cooks my food.
Mm.
It's cooked by the sun. There's
Mm-hmm.
only one chef on this planet. I am not a chef. I cannot compete with the sun. The sun right now is cooking my coconuts. You see my coconut tree in the back here. The sun is here for a good 12 hours for the day, cooking my pot, cooking my mangoes, cooking the avocados, the lettuce, the tomatoes, the you name it. So it is sun cooked food,
Right.
sun done food. So I use the word sun fired because at the time, besides the terminology raw food, in the whole circle, they used to either say raw food or living foods.
Yeah.
You know, Ann Wigmore and then brought that about living. Oh, there was other people before Ann Wigmore that used the word living foods. But uh, but hey, I see people having a lobster bouncing off their plate and they call it a living food. The same way they got clams and they call that raw, so there's
Right.
no thing about. So I just still wasn't comfortable calling my food a living food. Uh, there was also another terminology that was used back then in the old school. They call it unfired foods.
Mm.
Unfired foods. And I said, oh, wait a minute. This is such a negative thing. Why do I need to use a negative word to describe this beautiful food? There's nothing on
Mm.
about a tomato, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So simply all I did, I added the S to unfired.
I see. Excellent. Yeah.
So we
Perfect.
got sun-fired foods. We put it in a positive light. So it's been cooked by the sun. So what we do at Sunfired, we do not cook the sun
Mm.
out of the food because our primary nutrient is sun. Sun. We need sunlight, sunlight, sunlight. Without sun, there is no life.
Mm.
So this is why we call the cuisine sun-fired foods, foods that are cooked by the sun.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. And were you, as I was saying, did you have a restaurant or how did that work? Were you chefing for people or?
Yeah, well, in 1978, I retired, as an administrator in the public schools in California, and I moved to Africa.
Oh
Yeah,
wow.
I thought I would end up in Egypt, but that wasn't working for me. But ultimately, I ended up in Tanzania, at the foot of the Kilimanjaro mountain, in Mount Meru, with the Maasai people, and they're like heavy, blood eaters. They're like warriors. So
Yeah.
lots of cow's blood and all of that kind of stuff. But I was able to live side by side with them in peace, harmony, and love because as a fruitarian, I enjoyed being in their environment. Because my first 2 years, from 1976 to 1978, I was a complete fruitarian when I got into all raw food,
Mm.
completely all fruitarian. So I was eating avocados there that was as big as coconuts. There was cholera, so they said don't eat the greens, so that was perfect for me. So I pretty much existed as a fraternity. It was wonderful. But anyway, when I came back to the U.S. in 1979, and I landed in Harlem, USA, uh, uh, I basically was trying to find organic fruits and could not find any at all. The only place that was organics in New York at the time, in quite abundance, was down in the village, the Greenwich Village, the East Village. So I decided to start a co-op in Harlem and bringing in organic fruits, from California and Florida into New York, just to get mines at a reasonable cost. So that's how I started being in the food business, having a co-op, sharing with the people in my community to spread the cost, and gain the value, increase value for self. But it so happened that the co-op didn't work out as I had planned. So So I needed still my stuff, and I was doing all the work, and my fellow co-opers weren't cooperating. So I decided to just take it out of the house and started a retail business. I opened up a fruit stand uh, and started incorporating organic vegetables and everything like that, and selling juices and salads in my small little outlet in Harlem. So that was the beginning of Sunfired Foods as a business. You
Mhm.
know, 1980 was when we were fully on the map, basically just selling prepared salads and juices and organic fruits and vegetables and packaged dried fruits and nuts and these things. And being all over New York City doing the big festivals, the summer's festivals, the spring festivals, all these things, vending. And this is when I started building my reputation in New York as the place to find clean, vegetarian foods, you know, raw food especially, and the juices. So people would come from downtown, uptown, all around town to partake of what I had in Harlem. So it got very interesting, very busy, and eventually I hit the road and did all the national health festivals throughout the entire U.S. and built my national reputation there as, you know, the sun-fired food people, or the people you want to go to when you go to these health shows,
Nice.
because they got the goods. Because we were preparing the food in the booth because it was all raw, so we didn't have to go back home to a kitchen, and we put on a big show, you know, and it
Nice.
became very popular, and the rest has been history.
That's fantastic. And I guess that often raw food attracts, lots of interesting people like celebrities and things like that. Have you had a lot of people like that, interesting people come to you for food and for your services?
Oh yes, well, you know, I actually ended up back in California in 1983 after I became so popular on the circuit with what I was doing. California was like my most fertile ground in terms of where we got the greatest reception. So I opened up in at the Beverly Hills Juice Club. I set up a whole deli operation next to my buddy Dave Otto, who had the big Beverly Hills Juice Club. So we had the Sunfire Deli right there. And yes, so we had Demi Moore, uh, quite a few celebrities came through, you know, Sidney Poitier, Joe Piscopo, you know, all the big celebrities at the time who were into the vegan lifestyle, even Woody Harrelson. I ended up having a restaurant on La Cienega Boulevard, Paradise Pies, you know, because we were known for our pies. Those were the stars of our show and still are the stars of our show. Exciting fruit pies, and we even have savory pies we've incorporated as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, so you know we've had quite a few big names. I've catered even in the U.S. Congress. I catered for the Congress. You
Jeez,
know,
wow.
all raw food. You know, when they were debating the health care bill during the Clinton era, you know, and so we've been around. We've been around to major institutions throughout the world, presenting the whole sun-fired concept. And yeah, I am featured in the Oxford Encyclopedia as well, you know, as a living legend. When they did an expose on the history of vegetarianism from Pythagoras up to the modern day, and in that edition of the Oxford Encyclopedia, they acclaim not only Dr. Ann Wigmore as the only contribution that raw food cuisine has done to humanity was through Ann Wigmore, the whole sprouting culture. So they acclaim her, and in the next breath, they acclaim me as the father of ethical gourmet raw food cuisine as well.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah, and so getting back to kind of the this whole lifestyle for people that are beginning, that are trying to learn more about this, what is your advice for people that are starting off? How do they transition? What should they go towards? What's your advice to newcomers?
Well, I definitely advise that you keep it real for self. You know, forget the rules, forget the regulations.
Mm.
Just number one, make the commitment that you're going to go all live. No cooked food whatsoever, no animal products whatsoever. So from there, you know, the struggle is on. If you enjoy onions and raisins, make an onion raisin salad. Whatever piques your fancy, whatever turns you on, eventually the body is going to self regulate. And because the body is constantly, as it becomes cleaner, it is constantly rejecting the most objectionable thing in the diet.
Yeah.
So dive in, do whatever you got to do, and once the body is comfortable, it's going to refine it, it's going to take over, and you will be self-guided. You'll be on autopilot, so you're safe. I've never known raw food to kill anyone, to hurt. It may so-called make you sick if you go through a healing crisis, but keep it wet.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it wet. Tons of liquids. Tons of liquids, tons of liquids, tons of liquids. And eat as often as you need to. Just again, don't straitjacket yourself. you know, just take off the gloves and just go for it. And your body is going to tell you, your sensor will be on, your taste buds are going to get reactivated. Even your body thermostat is going to start working. So don't think because you live in London, you're going to need a hot bowl of coffee or a
Yeah.
hot bowl, dandelion tea. So to stay warm. That is totally not true.
Excellent.
Hot food does not make the human body warm in the winter.
Mm.
Hot food whips your body the same way a jockey whips the horse and the horse tries to run away from the sting of the whip, it runs faster. So when you whip your body with a cup of hot chocolate, because it's cold, it's gonna has to try to cool it down instantly, so it generates a lot of enzymatic activity.
Mm.
So you feel stimulated to generate this enzymatic activity, and you have a false sensation of being warm. And you have to keep whipping the body all day long. But if you resist that whip and you allow your body's thermostat to work, you're going to be warmer than anybody else drinking hot stuff. I experienced that in New York for 15 years, eating all living foods, and I was warmer than people whipping their body all day long with hot chocolate, hot tea, hot soup, hot coffee, and all of these things. The body is real. Let it be, and it knows what to do.
Amazing, amazing. But what are some of the mistakes you've seen people make over the years that have, maybe people have struggled with the raw food diet, given up with it? What are some of the mistakes you've seen?
Well, I think one of the biggest mistake is that we try to live for others, what others think. So people make critiques, people make comments, they say certain things based on their weakness, and we trying to identify with them or trying to please them, whether it's family members, loved ones, or you name it. We tend to kind of flex a little too much. We go to holidays and we sit down at the table and we dine with them, and decide like, well, no, I'm just going to do it. It's Thanksgiving. I got to eat with the family. That's a mistake. Eat with the family, but, teach the family as well. Hold your ground. Hold your ground, or stand your ground, as they say, because you are an example to these people. And obviously, you don't want to insult them. You don't want to criticize people. You do not want to take away the sacredness of the moment. So either bring your food or just, restrict yourself to only what you can consume there. But of course, try not to be the conversation of the table, because those are
Mm.
big challenge. And so the whole thing of traveling and eating out and all of these things, we think just making that little sacrifice once, that's it. I'm gonna go take a laxative. I think life doesn't work that smoothly, just like that. As they tell you in these commercials, I bet you can't just eat one.
Yeah.
Re- Resist that first
Yep.
bite
Yep.
always. But be ready. Have your fruits with you at least, and just keep drinking, even if it's just water that you have to drink. You got to keep flushing, keep it moving, and you know there's a whole lot of myth that goes on around this whole lifestyle, especially the whole protein myth. And many people I've known that have, been on the lifestyle. They went back because either the doctor told them they need to eat meat or something of that nature. They thought they were falling apart too much. They were losing too much weight. But weight is waste. Good, clean food is not going to build in a dirty, strong. First order is to clean it out. So you're going to lose weight initially, you're going to shrink down, and then you're going to rebuild the body with the proper quality material. So it's just a moment. It's just a transition. It's just a step. So it's not where you're going to be forever. So we have to really educate ourselves, and associate yourself with groups, with individuals that are going to help reinforce and strengthen, your concept of where you want to be and what is healthy.
That's excellent advice, Aris. Thank you very much. Um, so one thing I was wanting to really ask you about is I've heard you use the phrase the raw food circus, and that there is, and obviously you've been to a lot of events and you've been to a lot of different expos and different things like that. And in the raw food world, there tends to be, or there has been in the past, a tendency for selling different products like supplements and superfoods and all these different things. And you've never taken supplements, and for you, it seems like from just talking to you, you're talking about all these foods as being superfoods, as far as what I can hear, the way that you talk about them. But what's your thoughts about the raw food? The movement, what you've seen, the raw food circus, as you call it. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I call it the raw food circus because there's so many characters in there, and there's so much different information. We're all playing all these different roles, but ultimately, it all works. It all works because once you get people into the fold, eventually they're gonna have to come home. They gotta come home. So if it takes selling them some powdered maca, to get them into the fold, it's a beginning. If it takes plant-based, this whole new plant-based concept is so ridiculous, you know. But if that's what it takes to bring them in the fold, that's fine. They're gonna find Sunfired one day because they're gonna want to upgrade eventually, because once they see that a lot of this stuff is just spinning a web around there. There's basically the reason I say it's a circus because there's a lot of clowning around in the system based on making money,
Hmm.
making money, and I think one of the biggest disservice that we have done to Dr. Ann Wigmore and the major pioneers of this entire so-called raw food movement is taking the fresh out of it.
Right.
It's about fresh food. So the whole superfood culture, thanks to David Wolf, I think it has even set us back a few, a few steps, you know, because everything it's all is superfood. I mean, look, can you imagine if when I go to Peru and I eat, say, a lucuma, a fresh lucuma fruit? Wow.
Yeah.
When I eat a dried powdered lucuma fruit, it's not the same.
Yeah.
The fresh lucuma is absolutely a superfood. It's got that it's canistel. It's in the canistel family, like
Hmm.
the egg fruit.
Yeah.
The egg fruit. Why are you taking dried lucuma powder to Miami and selling it in Miami Beach, while in Miami they grow lucuma, they grow canistel, they grow the egg fruit,
Yeah.
the same food family, while you can have it fresh? Why? Because the pirates that go down to South America, go down to Peru and buy the powdered lucuma and bring it up north. They're just nothing but merchants. They're merchants. They're pirates. Before there were pirates going down to South America, going to the Inca, going to Cusco, getting the gold and all of this stuff, bringing it up north, selling it to the northerners, Europe and these places. Now they're just pirating something different. Dried fruits, dried powdered stuff. So for me, an apple is a superior food in the UK as opposed to having a dried lucuma powder,
Sure.
as a superfood. Apples, apples, apples. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. You eat apples, it absorbs acid. A dried powdered lucuma powder would not do that.
Mm.
Papaya. So if dried maca is a superfood, I gotta elevate papaya to a superior food. Papaya is a superior food. If the papain in papaya, that digestive enzyme is so powerful that it can tenderize a tough steak,
Mm.
there's no dried lucuma that can ever do anything like that. There's no dried maca that can ever do anything like that. So
Incredible.
let's not neglect our fresh fruits, our fresh strawberries and cranberries and raspberries in our environment to favor these powdered stuff that some merchant brought from South America because it's not. But look at the whole irony behind it. They go to South America, they go to Peru, and they buy all the superfood, sell it up north, and when their plane leave out, the next plane that might be coming in is a U.S. care plane. And what is this U.S. care plane doing? It's bringing in dried powdered cheese, dried up, milk powder, sugar to give to the natives. So you must be a clown going down there and taking the people's superfood, not educating them in the value of their food to consume it fresh, as opposed to eating all of this products, rotten, dried out dairy products that the U.S. government been subsidizing their farmers to keep producing, and then they dumping it down there to the natives and giving them all of this starch and all of this complex carbohydrates. Educate the people down there to value their food. Educate the people in your environment to value the simple, delicate, beautiful, ecstatic fruits that are grown in New York that you can't find down in Peru or any other place. Keep it fresh. Fresh is best. It's not about the food in your life, but the life in your food that truly nourishes. The water, the moisture is the electrical current. The electrolytes in that coconut water is too valuable to be just taken for granted. The electrolytes in fresh raspberry
Mm.
is very valuable. You're talking real superfood. You're talking real, energy that really boosts the body. You freeze dry it and you sell it them to now in a package, freeze dried raspberries. Where is the electrolytic value? Where is the water? Where is the moisture? So after the sunshine, our next most crucial element for food is oxygen. Where is the oxygen? When you dry out all these foods, that's when you bite into an apple, you want that oxygen, you want that oxidation in the apple to fuse into your system. You
Hmm.
don't want a dried up apple without oxidant, and then you go take some antioxidants. Where is it? Where is the logic other than in business when it comes to the raw food circus? So let's bring it back home.
Fantastic.
Let's bring it back home. It is not fair trade to go bring all this stuff from South America and then go plant a tree in Central Park and say it's fair trade. There's nothing fair about that.
So bringing it up to today, what are you doing now, and how can people get some information from you, some advice, some help from you? How do people reach out to you, and what do you provide now for people?
Well, I don't have any products to sell. But what I do, I'm an educator. Okay, I'm an educator. The Sunfired uh, Culinary Institute, we're looking to put it online. So pretty shortly, within next month or two, it's going to be up where you can go to sunfired.com, Sunfired, and register to sign up to take our classes online. We also receive students in person, so you can write me at sunfired@sunfired.com. and come to the Cayman Islands. I can certify you in Sunfired Cuisine.
Incredible.
We have juice feasts going on down here, so you can come and hang out with me and let's do a juice feast. We have detox programs, and you want to get into the life. We'll set you up. This is what we're mostly direct educators in the whole field of sun-fired living.
Mm.
And I'm available for lectures, workshops, seminars. I travel throughout the world doing presentations, and that's really about it.
Amazing.
Yeah, I'm just an educator, more so than anything else. I just found the proper subject, rather than languages and linguistics. Now it's about life, and it's about live food, sun-fired foods.
Amazing. Amazing. And just before we wrap up, have you got any last message for our audience?
Yeah, well, look, your body is the only thing you own. Okay, treat it well, take care of it. You got to love it to the max. So don't be shy about living in an expensive body. These foods may appear expensive up front, but the money. Look, again, I've never been sick in this lifestyle like this. So I got no medical bills to be concerned about and these
Mm.
types of things. So I think the big message from me really is you really don't have to be sick. Okay?
Yeah,
It is
yeah.
not truly part of living. Being sick is not real. It's not part of living. So take it from someone who is not sick, 72, got a lot of energy, get out, run up to 5 miles a day, and I'm not sick. Okay? So, own your life. Take ownership, take care of it, defend it, protect it. It's about a revolution. So it's been 50 years of this revolutionary living, and the revolution continues. Take ownership, take your life and protect it. That's why for me, I love, people coming on today about I'm a vegan culture. Yes, it's about animal rights, but look, the rights of me, of a human being as an animal, is very important. So if I live my rights and I protect myself, take care of myself as an animal, other animals don't have to worry about me. There's wild chickens running around here right now. They know I'm not going to try to eat them, you know. So if you take care of the life that you were born to love, other animals will be cared for in the process. So you don't have to neglect yourself to be an animal rights activist. Take care of number one first, and the others would definitely be blessed accordingly.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Aris LaTham. If anyone wants to reach out to Aris about anything, Sunfired at sunfired.com to reach out to him. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening to the podcast, and we're happy if you would share it with other people who might be interested in hearing this. And if you can give us a good rating, if you've got the ability to do that, or leave a comment and let us know some more feedback. If you'd like to learn more about a raw vegan fruit-based kind of lifestyle, also you can come to the UK Fruit Fest and check out fruitfest.co.uk, and you can learn more about that as well. So thank you very much, Dr. Aris Latham. Thank you,
Yes, you're welcome.
thank you everyone for joining us, and we will see you in the next podcast.